Yemenis marked the 34th anniversary of the first parliamentary elections during the rule of late leader Ali Abdullah Saleh. The Houthis claim responsibility for attacks on a British oil tanker in the Red Sea. The United Nations says it will take 14 years to clear the war debris and rebuild Gaza. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today News. I am Abir Ali. Yemenis marked the 34th anniversary of the first parliamentary elections that was held on the 27th of April 1993 during the rule of the late leader Ali Abdullah Saleh. That particular day represented the first birth of the democracy, not just in Yemen, but in the Arabian Peninsula. This report has more.
April 27, 1993 is a day of democracy and victory for the will of the Yemeni people. Only the great days remain immortal in the memory of the people, and only the makers of their events remain inhabiting the stories. April 27, 1993 was not an ordinary day as much as it was a political victory that completed the greatest victory Yemen witnessed on May 2022. 1990, which was the re-achievement of Yemeni unity and the establishment of democracy and political pluralism as an approach and means to reach power through free and direct elections. The 27th of April represents the most prominent event not only in the history of Yemen, but in the history of the Arab region. On this day, Yemen witnessed the first free and direct parliamentary elections and the first embodiment of pluralism in which parties with different political orientations competed. Yemenis lived in an era full of achievements during which they witnessed a country moving towards a better future. According to politicians and observers of Yemeni affairs, this democratic event that Yemen witnessed in April 1993 was a victory when Ali Abdullah Saleh was elected as President of the Republic by the People's Assembly at that time. Today, after more than 13 years of the event that ravaged the country, order and law have been replaced by chaos and rule by gunpowder. There is no longer any political pluralism in which everyone participates. Yemenis remember this day as the day that witnessed the first competitive parliamentary elections based on political pluralism. These elections followed the unification of the north and south of Yemen in May 1990, and from that day it became a day for democracy and pluralism.
A drone attack on a gas field in Iraq killed 4 Yemeni workers and wounded 3 others. The government statement called it a terrorist attack without blaming a specific group. The regional government's electricity ministry announced the suspension of gas production and a loss of 2,500 megawatts of power production. A ship was damaged when it was attacked twice by at least 2 missiles while traveling off Yemen's coast. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attacks, which the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations said took place southwest of the Yemeni port of Makha. In the first attack, the vessel experienced an explosion in close proximity of the vessel, which was felt by the crew on board. The U.S. Army announced that it destroyed a drone and an explosive-laden drone in areas controlled by the Houthi militia. The U.S. Central Command added that an anti-ship ballistic missile was launched from areas controlled by the Houthi terrorists in Yemen towards the Gulf of Aden, with no reports of casualties. The engineering teams of 5th Military District recovered a number of Houthi mines north of Hajjagabarat. The teams reported discovering a minefield left by the Houthi militia in the area surrounding the mine explosion. Meanwhile, 1 person was seriously injured as a result of the explosion of a landmine planted by the Houthi militia near his house, which led to the amputation of one of his feet.
We are now here in the area where a car exploded near the house of the citizen Muhammad Tawil. The citizen was exposed to the amputation of one of his legs and severe injuries in his body, and this area is still filled with landmines.
With floods hitting many Yemeni provinces, landmines have swept away to safe areas, putting civilians and cattle in danger. During the past years, landmines explosions occurred in areas that saw no military conflict. That happened because floods washed away the landmines to safe places. This report has more details.
The Saudi project to clear Yemeni lands of mines, Massam warned of the danger of migratory mines that are swept away by torrential rains during the rainy season throughout Yemen. The project said in a press statement, "We renew our warnings to the people in all Yemeni regions of the danger of mines and unexploded ordnance left over from the war, which may be swept away by torrents from contaminated sites to residential and agricultural areas during the rainy season." Migratory mines represent an additional threat to civilians amid the ongoing war in Yemen. Yemenis wait for the rainy season for agriculture, but now the torrents are sweeping away everything in its path, including landmines and other remnants of the war. Massam explained that following the incident of the injury of two civilians, one of whom was a child, as a result of an explosive device that was swept away by floods in the area of Wadi Bayhan in Shabwa Governorate, the 9 team began clearing work on the flood drains in the area and was able to remove an anti-tank landmine and continues its work to secure the lives of civilians. The statement called on all farmers, especially in contact areas contaminated with mines, to be careful in dealing with all foreign objects they find that have been swept away by torrential rains into their areas. It also called on citizens to immediately report any foreign object suspected of being a mine or explosive device to the component authorities and not to approach valleys that may be contaminated with mines and explosive remnants of the war. The Houthis planted tens of thousands of mines and distributed them on fields, roadways, and near schools and mosques, killing hundreds of civilians, many of whom were children. During the past years, several incidents were recorded in the governorates of Ma'rib, Al-Jawf, Hajjah, Shabwa, Al-Bayda, Al-Dala, Lahshtaz, and Al-Hudaydah as a result of mines and other explosive devices.
An Egyptian delegation met Israeli counterparts on Friday, looking for a way to restart talks to end the war in Gaza. According to Israeli media reports, Israeli intelligence officials believe there are 33 female, elderly, and sick hostages left alive in Gaza, out of a total of 133 still being held by Hamas and other Palestinian militant groups. According to the United Nations, removing the 37 million tons of debris left by the Israelis' catastrophic assault in the Gaza Strip might take up to 14 years and fit $25 billion. This report has more.
A United Nations official warned on Friday that removing the massive quantity of wreckage and debris, including explosive munitions left by Israel's catastrophic assault in the Gaza Strip, might take up to 14 years. Israel's military assault against Hamas in Gaza has turned most of the tiny coastal enclave, home to 2.3 million people, into a wasteland. The United Nations Mine Action Service stated that the war had left an estimated 37 million tons of debris in the densely inhabited region. Although it is impossible to determine the exact number of unexploded ordnance found in Gaza, it could take 14 years under certain conditions to clear debris, including rubble from destroyed buildings, according to the UN. It added that there's a failure rate of at least 10% of land service ammunition that is being fired and fails to function. over 34,300 Palestinians have been killed and 77,300 wounded in Israel's military offensive on Gaza since October 7. Some authorities in the densely crowded enclave believe that even a truce might not be enough to restore normalcy in Gaza, where more than 400,000 buildings were completely or partially damaged during Israel's 6-month war on the Strip. A senior Palestinian official stated that Israel's air, land, and sea strikes on Gaza's 5 districts had left more than 20 million tons of debris, with metal pieces and scraps accounting for more than 1/4 of the total. The UN reports that the Gaza Strip needs some $25 billion to rebuild what the war machine has destroyed in about 200 days. The Euromed Monitor said in a report this week that at least 131,200 housing units in the Gaza Strip have been completely destroyed, and another 281,000 units have been partially damaged.
Coming up in the news. Cholera outbreak hits major areas in Adala province amid collapsing health system.
As you can see today, this is one of our classes where we are having children aged starting from 9, 10, who have not been enrolled in the formal education, but in countries like Yemen that has been suffering from a protracted conflict since 2014, more families and children are internally displaced. As these children and families move from one location to another, their access to education is interrupted. Even when families are prioritizing their children's education, schools in the host communities might find it very hard to accommodate the increased number of children who are coming and want to go back to school. And the result is more children are out of school across the country. UNICEF, in collaboration with its partners and with support from ECHO, is providing these families, children, and communities with a second chance to education through its accelerated emergency learning programs, as we have been working with families, communities, and children to increase their awareness of the importance of education. We have been seeing more children coming to our classes every single day.
Welcome back. Fuel and food imports to the ports of Hodeidah in the first quarter of this year increased by about 30% compared to the same period last year. The World Food Programme confirmed that the total volume of fuel and food imports amounted to 2 million metric tons during the period between January and March 2024. This is while the ports of Hodeidah, Salif, and Ras Isa received in the first quarter of our current year a total of 1,215,000 metric tons. The World Bank revealed that the accumulated losses in real GDP due to the war in Yemen are estimated at about $66 billion. The report explained that Yemen's gross domestic product has declined cumulatively by 50% since the outbreak of the war, sparked by the Houthis in 2015. The ongoing conflict, including periods of embargo, has led to the cessation of Yemeni exports and a severe reduction in food and fuel imports. Local residents north of Eb reported that the Houthi militia had installed a missile base at military site on the highest mountain peak in the governorate. Residents said that the militia installed a missile based for ballistic missiles and drones at a military site at the top of Nahra mountain overlooking more than one district in the governorate. According to the residents, since Thursday, the militia has been transporting equipment surrounding the place with crews and machinery and preventing the residents from climbing to the top of the mountain. Residents of Aden governorate confirmed the overflow of sewage into homes and shops. The residents pointed out that the sanitation services in the governorate were evading their duty to repair the sewage networks that had overflowed into the main streets. The residents explained that the authorities refused to connect until large sums of money were paid by the residents, calling on the government and the concerned authorities to repair the sewage network. In a recent report, the World Health Organization announced that 237 cases of polio infection had been recorded in Yemen. This came in a report titled Eradicating Polio in Yemen Step by Step, coinciding with the World Immunization Week. The UN organization said that Yemen's children can be particularly vulnerable, and with one child infected with polio, all unvaccinated children become vulnerable to the disease. With torrential rains and flash floods sweeping the residential zones of Dala governorate, waterborne diseases such as cholera are witnessing a major surge. This report has more details.
In the Azariq district south of Al-Dala, a deadly epidemic spreads during the times of war, with distress calls sent out to competent authorities and international organizations to confront the scourge. With torrential rains pelting the fields and flash floods sweeping the residential zones of the governorate, waterborne diseases such as cholera soon found prime breeding ground, spreading at breakneck speeds.
A cholera outbreak has swept through Al-Dala, targeting Al-Azariq, Hussein and Qataba among many other districts due to the seasonal rains and flash floods. We call upon relevant authorities to confront this epidemic.
According to health officials, new instances of cholera infections are being tracked throughout multiple areas in Al-Dala, despite the depleted healthcare system lacking the capabilities, such as staff and medical equipment, to provide adequate treatment. In the meanwhile, citizens call for greater funding for these medical institutions in order to safeguard the general population.
Since the 21st of Ramadan, we've received over 120 cases with symptoms of acute diarrhea, and we are projected to receive even more.
As of April 18, there are more than 18,600 suspected cases across all of Yemen. Cholera and acute malnutrition have taken unprecedented tolls on Yemen's population, affecting mostly children and women amidst the collapsed public healthcare system.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Yemenis mark the 34th anniversary of the first parliamentary elections during the rule of late leader Ali Abdullah Saleh. The Houthis claim responsibility for attacks on a British oil tanker in the Red Sea. The United Nations says it will take 14 years to clear the war debris and rebuild Gaza. This is the end of the news. Thank you for streaming with us. It was Abir Ali.